All right. Hello and welcome back to another video here, starting with influencer marketing. This is the first in a four-part series that I'll be doing. Hopefully, I can keep each video to a manageable length. I have significantly adjusted this presentation from the slides that came out of the textbook to more better reflect my own personal experiences. I realize there's not a lot of examples here, although I do have some. And just to start off, for me, I'm not an influencer, but I have worked with influencers for the better part now of about 8 years. It's been an interesting ride, um, and I will say the idea of influencer marketing has evolved over time. I think at first it was more of just a fun way of people kind of realizing how they could make some cash on the side. And now, if you look at it, it's become very much a business model. You have entire corporations now that exist to just work with influencers and negotiate on their behalf. And there are so many out there that, like so many influencers, I mean, that we are really at an inflection point for this new form of digital marketing that is a blend of advertising, of social media marketing, public relations, all these different things working together. So let's go ahead and begin. What is an influencer really at its most basic level? It's anybody that has an influence on your life. Um, we're all born with, for the most part, we have our parents or other family members, friends, leaders in our community. There was a time many, many years ago where you would get these leaders of these groups. Maybe they were head of a church or a political figure, and they would get up on the box in the middle of town square and preach whatever it is that they thought. And that was really the way to communicate an idea with a large group of people, because people in the common citizens of that time, of the colonial era, of the 1800s, even the 1900s, early 1900s, they would believe whatever that person said because they were an influencer. They had really command over an engaged audience. And that now has translated to the internet, where people that, for whatever reason, are amassing these subscribers and followers and viewers, they are the ones that people trust now. There are probably millions of influencers across all levels that we'll get to in another video, but it has become a point now where companies can have found that, oh, I shouldn't, if I just work and communicate directly from the brand, that's only going to have a limited success. But if I share my brand message through an influencer who has really a lot of say and, I mean, influence, I guess is the word. Um, with what they say, people in their community will believe, then that is going to be much more powerful coming from them than it is from my brand account. Now, obviously, it's existed for centuries, but if you look at it in a general marketing sense, at least something that's documented that I can show you, this started about 100 years ago. Um, and that was, her name was Babe Didrikson. I think I'm saying that right. She was an Olympian. In the Olympics, she did a handful of sports. Track, she played basketball. She became actually best known as in golf. And I think she did like weightlifting. She did everything. And she was pretty popular. And in the 30s, she did an ad for Dodge, the Dodge 6 Salon Brougham, whatever that's called. When I say that word, it's pretty funny. Um, this was an ad that was in a newspaper or magazines back in the mid 1900s. Um, she was very popular. I mean, she wasn't Jesse Owens, or I mean, she wasn't, Muhammad Ali later on, wasn't Babe Ruth, but her nickname Babe Didrikson, Babe came from Babe Ruth because she played softball, or I guess it was just baseball back then. Um, and it was really something to behold where you saw her signature in these newspapers in an ad, and suddenly it gave really a lot of credibility to the new Dodge vehicle, this the Dodge 6, that was really just for the first time hitting the streets. And this hits home here in Michigan because I believe this the Dodge brothers started obviously here, but they I don't know if they may have already outsourced it outside of Michigan at this point. But really interesting to see really how this started. Now you fast forward to today, and we really think of influencers as social media influencers. Um, and the way that I look at it is social media influencers and content creators, they are technically different things. Influencers, they have a tangible business benefit. So there's a tangible business benefit to working with them. Content creators is just a blanket term for anybody who creates content. Heck, I am technically a content creator. I wouldn't call myself, I don't call myself that, but I probably fall under that umbrella. Now, an influencer is really, I mean, I don't think all influencers are content creators, but most of them are. And that's someone who actually takes their influence and uses it. Um, Amassing millions of followers does not automatically make you an influencer, but I will say being able to mobilize an engaged audience, that makes you an influencer. Um, there's also a difference between, like Cristiano Ronaldo, largest Instagram following, I believe still, he is not a content creator. He's an athlete, soccer player. He is an influencer, 100%. He made millions on his Instagram alone, but I wouldn't call him a content creator. He is a celebrity. There are these are terms that have some overlap. Steph Curry is another example. He's recently gotten big into LinkedIn. I think he's understanding the business side. He has equity in Under Armour. He is the spokesperson for Under Armour. I think he's trying to lean into content creation a little bit more, or at least his team is trying to. But when I think of a content creator, I think of more of like the Charlie D'Amelio, I think her name is, where the people are actually going and creating stuff every day. It's kind of like what my kids watch. One of my kids loves a basketball influencer. His name is Jesser. This guy just lives to make content. He creates. It's all about sports. It's about other things. Mr. Beast is kind of like the top content creator. Is he an influencer? Yes, but number one, he is a content creator. Hopefully, that doesn't actually confuse you. But yeah, I mean, influencers have changed the way that marketing happens. Now, I was going to, I'm not going to paint a rosy picture entirely here, but there are some positive stats that are out there. So there's 200 million influencers. It's a $24 billion industry, and reports range in terms of how effective it is. On one side, yes, influencer marketing can deliver up to an 11 multiplier, right? 11 times higher ROI than traditional advertising because there's money spent on influencer marketing. And people have said that brands can make up to for every dollar spent, they'll make $6.50. I haven't seen that, but that's what they say. Another report said that 89% of marketers surveyed considered influencer marketing effective. Now can be misleading because that means effective or highly effective. So that to me that just means positive. 86% of female consumers have purchased a product after seeing it recommended by an influencer. I think a lot of that is on YouTube, but 70% of teenage YouTube subscribers at the time, this was mainly Gen Z, they will trust influencers' opinions, which means if you can get an influencer to support your product and promote it in a way that is not overly promotional and advertising, that's going to enhance your brand equity with these viewers. I think this is really important for brands both in the B2B and B2C space. On YouTube, I am working with a company right now where we're playing the long game, and we are trying to work with influencers to get in the minds of younger teenage consumers, where it's a B2B product. It's a software. It's something that the target audience is college students. But the idea is don't try to get into their mouth. Don't try to, build brand awareness once they're already there. You want to do that before they're there. If they're going into their senior year and they already know about this student project management tool, thanks to some influencers, they're going to be ready to purchase. It's not super expensive, but they're going to be ready to access it when they get on campus. Um, so that's kind of the idea, is that we're trying to shape these young minds from a very capitalistic standpoint early. All right. So the last slide here is, where do influencers live? I'm sure we all can relate to this. We all, if I were to ask you, okay, you think of influencer marketing, what's the first platform you think of? You're going to think of either TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. Facebook was a little surprising to see, but I think that platform is just so big. And also, Facebook, to me, from what I have seen, is very much a secondary market for a lot of these influencers. So if I'm an influencer, I have 10 million followers on YouTube. I'm also going to have a Facebook page. I need to exert my influence on other platforms. There was the godfather of content marketing. His name is Joe Pulizzi. Once said, "You don't want to build an empire on rented land." And what he means by that is, you could build, and this has happened. We saw it with Twitter. There were influencers on Twitter/X in the 2010s who made millions, made a lot of money just by putting out tweets 140 characters or less, then later 280 characters or less. Now, with what has happened and transpired on the platform since Elon Musk purchased it in 2022, a lot of these influencers are stuck wondering, what am I supposed to do here? My audience is dwindling. They're leaving the platform. I no longer have the influence and the power and the ability to mobilize a community like I once did. And as a result, you see more and more moving off of Twitter and /X over to other platforms. It's very hard to build it back up. You can also think about getting blocked. I had a student a couple of years ago who had I don't remember, it might have been like 100,000 followers on TikTok. Her account got hacked and she lost it entirely and had to start from scratch. Lost that entire business. It's like losing a business. And you put all this time and effort into it, and you are stuck with nothing. You're stuck starting over. The way that Joe Pulizzi says is, his strategy is that you got to have a website, and you need to capture people's contact information, email addresses. That way, there's always a way to connect with them. I don't know if I would go that far. I honestly think that's a little antiquated, but I do think you need to have some redundancies in place. That means if you're on one platform, you got to be on another, because you never know when something's going to go awry. And the one that I'm looking at is TikTok, because there is a lot of question marks about what is going to be the future of that platform. There are millions of users on TikTok that are influencers that make money off of their TikTok content. They're at an inflection point where over the coming couple of years, we may see TikTok as we know it change dramatically, similar to X and Twitter. And if these people don't have another place where they can immobilize their following, they're really out of luck, and they're not going to be able to monetize in the ways that they are currently enjoying. So all of this is to say, this slide is important because these are not mutually exclusive, or at least they shouldn't be. The idea is that an individual influencer needs to be active and have a major following on more than one platform, and be actively utilizing it as a revenue stream. Ideally, they're on a handful of platforms. There's a couple I know that there's always the one where you're biggest, where you kind of made it big, but then you have other ones. A lot of people started on YouTube, and then since then they have expanded their reach to TikTok, Instagram, and maybe Facebook. So think about it from that standpoint, that if you are a brand, back to the kind of looking at it through the brand's lens, you are at a point where you can work with influencers wherever they are, but just know there are usually other opportunities where you're not limited to just where they have that 100 million followers. They probably have percentages of that elsewhere, and a lot of that is probably the same people who follow them on their main platform. All right, well, we'll stop there for this first video. The next one, I'm going to talk a little bit about AI influencers and the impact that that has had here in the 2020s. So hop on over to the next one here in the playlist, and I will see you over there.